ẹ kú dédé àsìkò yìí ní gbogbo ibi tí ẹ bá ti láǹfààní láti máa gbọ́ mi tó bá fẹ́ dàbí everybody ó ń gbọ́dọ̀ máa ronú bí everybody. Lákọ̀ọ́kọ́ ẹ bá mi wo fọ́nrán yìí, gbogbo ohun tí ẹ bá rí sí fọ́nrán yìí ẹ bá mi fi ránṣẹ́ sí abẹ́ comment section. A máa ń pé gbọ́n ni a kì í pé gọ̀. Ó yá ẹ jẹ́ ká débẹ̀.
Pariwo wípé Yorùbá people ní ọ̀rẹ́ nínú Nàìjíríà want the Yoruba of our dream, which is to protect ourselves within Nigeria. Let me tell you the truth for those of you that are shouting Yoruba nation. You cannot break Nigeria without the concept of America, of Britain, of Russia. The Igbos want to become the Lord and Master of the entire southern Nigeria. Can two work together except they agree? Kí la need in Nigeria? Decentralization. Bobo biometrics, database, not decentralized.
Ọ̀tẹ̀ ló ń jẹ́ ló ń pè ọ́ kò sẹ́ni tí ò lórúkọ tiẹ̀ àti wípé ọmọ kì í gọ̀ títí sẹ́ẹ̀ kó gbàgbé orúkọ ara rẹ̀. Ààfin tèmi ò nílò ìdánimọ̀ lọ́jà, tó bá dọ́jà báyìí wọ́n á mọ̀ pé ó dọ́jà ni. Èmi tí ń tòótọ́ Samuel Owóyẹmí, fẹ́lẹ́fẹ́lẹ́ láyé lórúkọ mi, fẹ́lẹ́ ní gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ mí sí. Èmi náà kọ́, Ọlọ́run ọba òkè ló fún mi ṣe ní gbogbo ìgbà.
I greet us all in the name of Olódùmarè. My name is Oladimeji Bolarinwa. I'm the president of Think Yoruba First organization. I would also implore us to share this content, share this link to different places. Please help us to repost for the next 5 to 10 minutes so that as many people as possible can participate in this brilliant intellectual conversation. This is the space, this is the platform where Awoism is being decoupled, where Awoism is being analyzed, where proper ethnic nationalism within the context of indigenous African civilization and nations are being talked about. If you are watching from Facebook, we greet you in the name of Olódùmarè. If you're watching from TikTok, we greet you all in the name of Olódùmarè. If you're watching from YouTube, especially, we greet you all in the name of Olódùmarè. This kind of conversation, it's not just a one-way conversation. It's a conversation that your inputs, your contributions are also very, very important. Please share this conversation, share this link with as many friends as possible. I also want to greet our wonderful people on Twitter space. God bless you for your dedication. God bless you for always being there. God bless you for appreciating the glory of God in our life. God bless you for believing the message God has sent us to the Yoruba people at this particular moment. Tonight is also going to be another wonderful night where the bondage of lukewarmness, the bondage of ignorance is going to be broken in the lives of many Yoruba people. The topic we are having today is a form of rhetorical question, and it's a form of a phrase, it's a form of a clause. You can call it anything. But the topic is simply restructuring the Fourth Republic. Now, what is the Fourth Republic? The Fourth Republic, the Nigeria has had 4 republics. The First Republic was truncated in 1966, which was before the coup of 1966. The Second Republic was truncated in 1983-84. The Third Republic was truncated in 1993, which we know as June 12 struggle. Now we are in the Fourth Republic, which started in 1999. Nigeria's Republican era, right from the post-colonial era, after Nigeria got independence in 1960, has always been a bloody war. Nigeria has witnessed a bloody civil war where millions of people perished. So Nigeria is not a country that has had it rosy. It's a country, there are many people who have sacrificed their lives. There are many people who continue to sacrifice their lives in order to ensure that the country continues to survive, in order to ensure that the country continues to exist. So what are we talking about tonight? Again, restructuring. The term restructuring has been politicized by many political parties. PDP, that ruled Nigeria between 1999 to 2015, had always said they will never restructure Nigeria. And APC, that campaigned on the banner of restructuring, have within their ranks, like the Vice President Shetima, that said restructuring my foot. What exactly is restructuring? Why is restructuring so important to Nigerian Federation? We have to go back into history to understand where we are coming from. Nigeria is not a nation, it's a country of nations. The amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914, which brought disparate people, disparate civilization into one country, started this thing called Nigeria. So before 1914, there was nothing called Nigeria. Nigeria was a British experiment that started in 1914. It was a British experiment for British economic interests. It was meant to provide raw materials needed to be able to satisfy the industries, to be able to sustain the industries of Europe. In order to be able to sustain the industries in Liverpool, in London, in Manchester, in Leeds, in Luton, in Bedford, that was why Nigeria was created. Now, So Nigeria was an accident of history, was a product of European imperialism. Nigeria never existed in the first place. And Nigeria is not just one civilization. It's a multiple civilization. And the people that are called Nigerians were not just docile when this amalgamation happened. Many of them have been at war for over 100 years. The Kanuris have been fighting the Fulani. The Kanuri Empire have been fighting the Fulani Sokoto Caliphate for over once non-stop of over 100 years. The Oyo Empire and the Oyo refugees have been fighting the Fulani Caliphate for another over 100 years. The Yorubas of Ekiti, Kogi, and some part of Kwara have been fighting the Nupe Bida Emirates for close to another 100 years before the amalgamation of Nigeria happened. The chiefs have been fighting the Tukuns. The Tukuns have been fighting the chiefs. The Birongs have been fighting against the expansionism of the Sokoto Fulani Caliphates that built one of the biggest empire in sub-Saharan Africa, which was built on slavery and on human slavery, because 2/3 of the population of the Sokoto Caliphate were slaves. So you have to understand where many of us, where Nigeria is coming from. And apart from that, while the European missionaries were heavily Christianizing the South, Lord Lugard ensured that Christianization agenda was not allowed to penetrate the Sokoto Caliphate. Because Nigeria was a product of an advanced form of social engineering in order to create a Nigeria of their choice, in order to create a Nigeria of their vision. Nigeria was a product of the genius of some people somewhere. And the creation of Nigeria was not just a British phenomenon. There were other European powers that contributed to the creation of Nigeria. In 1884, the partition of West Africa amongst different European powers created the first borders of what we call Nigeria. And the area called Borno was not part of the 1884 Nigerian borders. Borno used to be part of France. The area called Adamawa used to be part of France. It used to belong to the Germans, rather. But after the Germans lost the First World War, that area became highly contested. The French took it over. But because of the interest of the British in what they wanted to create in Nigeria, the British gave up Madagascar, exchanged Madagascar, gave Madagascar to the French, and the French gave the Borno Empire, gave it to the British. That was how the Kanuris became part of Nigeria. So, if not for that part of that incident in history, the people like Zulu, Alimadu Sherif, Shetima, Kashim Shetima would have been probably part of church today. So you have to understand that the geopolitics of Nigeria, the reality of Nigeria, the existence of Nigeria has always been controlled by some powers that be. So one way or the other, by British imperialism, by the act of God, by the act of man, by artificial creation, or by mistake, or by genocide, we became Nigerians. And between 1914 to 1960, the indigenous people that found themselves in Nigeria have been trying to destroy the colonialism, that Africans can also rule themselves. Africans can also administrate themselves. Africans are capable of governing themselves. This was what led to the anti-colonial struggle, led and championed by Abatola Inka Macaulay, who created the first political party in Nigeria. So you understand where many of us are coming from. The first party that was created was the NCNC. The NCNC was a pan-Nigerian party, which was meant to unite the entire South against British imperialism. But one way or the other, especially after the death of Abatola Inka Macaulay, the pan-Nigerian party became an Igbo-dominated party, which was meant to represent and defend the interests of the Igbos within Nigeria. The Yoruba people, who had fought a brutal civil war just 50 years, some 50 to 60 years before the 1930s, before the 1940s, how to unite themselves, how to find a way to pick up the pieces of the fragmented Yoruba country. And it was Chief Obafemi Awolowo that Olodumare sent in order to be able to achieve this beautiful dream. So Chief Obafemi Awolowo created the action group. I mean, if you read his autobiography, you read many of the books he wrote. His vow was that it was to organize the Yoruba people so that the Yoruba people are not going to be subsumed and subjected into local infernal colonialism under the guise of one Nigeria. The Fulanis, who are the hegemons controlling northern Nigeria, because when the British were creating Nigeria, they ruled the north via indirect rule, while the south was subjected to direct rule. The emirate structure, the caliphate structure was left intact. Not just left intact, it was made stronger by the British. They were supported intellectually. A lot of technocrats were sent there in order to ensure that the minority Fulani continue to be in control of all their conquered territories after the Usman Fodio Jihad. So within Nigeria, there were two colonizers, the British on one hand and the Fulanis on one hand. If you go and read so many memoirs of many British administrators, many historians, it is not a lie. It is not a mistake. It is not propaganda that the Fulanis are a form of by the local vassals, like by the local overlords of the Nupes, of the Hausas, of the Egons, and even the minority Yoruba people that were conquered in Ilorin. Because this is a history that we need to talk about. And it is that structure that has always determined political, economic, and geopolitical decisions that Nigeria has made ever since then. The Igbos were the big one of the biggest, after the Fulanis, the Igbos are one of the biggest beneficiaries of of British imperialism. Before 1914, there was no Igbo empire. Before 1914, there was no major Igbo kingdom. Before 1914, there was no centralized Igbo identity. Before 1914, there was nothing called pan-Igbonism. But due to British imperialism and the advent of Christianity, the ethnogenesis of the Igbo nation was created. And the father of the modern Igbo nation was Nnamdi Azikiwe. So the Igbos had the smallest landmass amongst out of the three major ethnic nationalities within Nigeria. Many of the neighbors of the Igbos had suffered under Igalas. The Igalas ruled the Igbos, northern Igbos, for more than 250 years. Western Igbos were under the Benin Empire for another close to 300 to 400 years. Invariably, many of the neighbors of the Igbos used to subjugate the Igbo nation for Igbo tribes and Igbo clans for more than 500 years. So the advent of colonialism gave the Igbos a power that they never had since the existence of the Igbo nation. And that is why they so much believed in the concept of one Nigeria. Because it gave them access, it gave them power, and it unleashed their own potential. The Yoruba people do not need, we had an history, had civilization before Nigeria. The Fulanis, they have history across West Africa before Nigeria. But colonialism and the creation of Nigeria further cemented their power over the majority within Nigeria. So this was the beginning of the rat race, of the combustion, of the combustible clash that led to the current scenario in Nigeria. So the Nigerian dream of a Fulani man is different from the Nigerian dream of an Igbo man. The Nigerian dream of an Igbo man is totally parallel to the Nigerian dream of a Yoruba man. So everybody was up against each other. And that was why if you go and read the different constitutional conference that happened between 1945 to 1960, what the Igbos wanted was different from what the Fulanis wanted. What the Fulanis wanted was different from what the Yoruba wanted. Due to colonialism, Igbos were already moving to Lagos, they were moving to Kano, they were moving to Jos, they were getting jobs, they were getting exposed for the first time in their existence to lands, to places, to opportunities they never believed they could get all their life. So the survival of Nigeria and ensuring that the British interest was protected in Nigeria was equivalent to the survival of the Igbo nation within Nigeria. Which was why, when the Fulanis were saying that they were going to secede out of Nigeria in 1954, it was Nnamdi Azikiwe that was going about convincing and begging the Fulanis to stay in Nigeria. Because the Igbos saw Nigeria as the Igbos saw Nigeria the way the British saw Nigeria. How do the British saw Nigeria? They see Nigeria where they see economic opportunities for the development of British power and maintaining the British imperialism and power. The Igbos see Nigeria from the same angle, which is why, while everybody was talking about true federalism, ethno-linguistic federalism, where Chief Obafemi Awolowo was saying that the ethnic minorities in the Middle Belt, in the Cross River Ogoja regions, in the Midwest, the Kanuri should have their own separate regions. The Igbos, on the other hand, were saying something else. They wanted a Nigeria where even the ethnic identity will be dissolved and destroyed. Because that was the Nigeria of their own dream. They believe that they are going to replace, they are Christianized, they are Westernized, and they were going to fill in the boots, fill in the shoes when the British leaves Nigeria. The Fulanis, on the other hand, they wanted two things. maintaining of the Sokoto Caliphate structure, the Danfodio structure, and the total political dominance of Nigeria, where Sharia is going to be the law. Sharia law will be the law of the land, which the political and religious leadership of that theocratic state called Nigeria is going to be in the hands of the Fulanis. So there was a deadlock. And the deadlock was the Fulanis, led by Ahmadu Bello, was asking for more political representation and power before they agreed to be part of Nigeria. Awolowo was very sacrosanct. He pleaded. He wanted the Igbos. He wanted to work with Nnamdi Azikiwe. He warned Nnamdi Azikiwe that this was going to backfire. Azikiwe never listened. In fact, the NCNC, which has been turned to an Igbo party by Azikiwe, connived with the NPC in order to give more political power, in order to ensure. So it was 2 against 1. Anytime the West, led by the Yorubas, that it is very, very antithetical, it is very, very unethical for the Fulanis to be allowed to have more political power over the rest of us within Nigeria under the banner of Arewa, that it's going to lead to an unbalanced federation. Azikiwe was sucking up to the North. So when you see and you talk about, the North is trying to suffocate Nigeria, why is the North having so much power in Nigeria? It is because of the handiwork of what the Igbos did in the First Republic. Which is why the decision you make today, politically, in business, in life, affects you for life. That's the way the world works. You cannot destroy Nigeria. Your forefathers cannot make decisions that have turned everybody into slaves within Nigeria. In the 1950s, where almost 3 to 4, 10 generations have been wasted within Nigeria because of this obnoxious judiciary system, which was the brainchild of Nnamdi Azikiwe and Benue Agwese and other Igbo intellectuals like Nrosi, and still be lecturing the rest of us about good governance or unity. Unitarianism destroyed Nigeria. Unitarianism is not for the betterment of Nigeria. It is for people that wanted to forge empires. And I keep on saying this. It is easy for the Igbos to capture the South and go and create their Igbo empire than thinking that they are going to take the whole of Nigeria to create an empire. They failed in the First Republic, which led to the Civil War. They are going to fail in the First Republic. So, Awolowo said Nigeria should be like a large federation with many republics. He gave an example of USSR. He gave an example of Switzerland. That Nigeria is a multitude of nations, is a multitude of civilizations. Zik was not listening. In fact, Awolowo said, let us put secession clause in Nigeria's constitution. So that if any republic or any federation wants to peacefully get out of this thing called one Nigeria, it will be done without any bloodshed. You know what Zik did? Zik wrote a letter to the British and wrote a powerful petition signed by other Igbo leaders that Awolowo should be tried for treason, for trying to undo the amalgamation that the great and mighty British has done. So you need to understand your history. That's why somebody cannot be in Lagos. Somebody cannot be saying Lagos is no man's land. Somebody cannot come from a people that wrote a letter and that people that said they are fighting for Biafran liberation, but they wrote a letter that once they capture Lagos, they are going to appoint a Biafran administrator who is likely going to be an Igbo man in Lagos. And the same people are lecturing you that they are interested in Biafra. You have to, when you believe such a thing, that means you are not politically intelligent. The Igbos do not want Biafra. The Igbos want the whole of Nigeria to be their Biafra. You need to understand that. That is their own definition of Nigeria. I have told you the definition of what the Fulanis want. The Fulanis want land, they want to be indigenous, they want to claim equal rights across all the indigenous places in Nigeria. Same thing as the Igbos. Which is why the NPC and NCNC political collaboration in the First Republic makes sense. The Igbos are nomadic, the Fulanis are nomadic. Their reality and their agenda within Nigeria is to extract resources and demographically inhabit and contend political power and economic power with indigenous people across Nigeria without respecting indigenous spaces, status quo. So it makes sense. So the unitary system actually makes sense to them. I don't want to go into different quotes by Igbo leaders and Fulani leaders within Nigeria. Because what Azikiwe said was it is a matter of time before the Igbo race are born to conquer Africa. What about Ahmadu Bello? He said Nigeria is going to be an extension of the estate of his great grandfather, Uthman Fodio. And minorities are going to be used as willing tools. If not for the killings and the gradual erasure of minorities out of in the Middle Belt, the minorities have been the biggest tool of Fulani imperialism in Nigeria. It's a bitter truth. They empowered it. They nourished it. So we need to understand where we are coming from. So in the First Republic, Awolowo was negotiating during I was talking about the conferences that gave birth to the first constitution in Nigeria. Some of the things Awolowo raised, I'm going to summarize it. Awolowo raised the issue of Awolowo wanted Nigeria to have regional police. Awolowo wanted regional railway, like the railway should be decentralized, should be in the hands of the regions. He wanted electricity to be in the hands of the regions. And as bad as the First Republic was, the regions controlled 50%. It was 50% derivation in the hands of the regions. So if they have crude oil, the crude oil is sold for 100 naira per barrel. The region will keep 50, and the remaining 50 was going to the center. So the regions were very rich. So the regions were able to have so much resources, which they were able to do the wonders of the First Republic. Many people talk about, oh, Awolowo did this, Awolowo did that. Awolowo could achieve so much because the resources, the cocoa taxes, and every other human and natural resources within the Southwest, within the Western region, 50% of it was staying in the West. That was what we had in the First Republic. Everybody was going at their own pace because that is the definition and fundamentals of federalism. And during this period, the Yoruba people were technically, politically annihilated and cannibalized out of Nigeria. The Midwest was taken out of us. The Yorubas of Delta, the Yorubas of Kwande Edo were taken out from our places, Akoko Edo, Ishekiris. We lost our brothers. Well, another chunk of our brothers in Kogi and Kwara were left in the north. Lagos, in fact, Azikwe was making political demands that more land should be taken from the Western region and added to create more bigger Lagos. That was what the Igbo nationalists was doing to Yoruba people in the First Republic. It's not a threat, because it is because of this lack of history that many Igbo youths and their elders believe the history of Nigeria started from 1967. That they tried to use the trauma of 1967 in order to blackmail the rest of Nigeria and continue to spew hate against the Yoruba people. Because we need to say the truth. In fact, Nigeria has been so magnanimous to the Igbos. Because you can't fight a civil war, and all of a sudden you came back from that civil war 9 years after the civil, 6 years after the civil, 9 years after the civil war, you became the vice president, you became the speaker. You became so powerful, you are getting ministerial position as if nothing happened. But the Yoruba people that fought for the preservation of Nigeria were thrown into the dustbin. We were thrown back into the political wilderness. And when that coup of Buhari happened, our leaders were also beaten again. Few years later, many of our people were also killed, which is to tell us there's an intentional gang up against Yoruba race within Nigeria, which is why it is very, very self-destructive. It is very, very counterproductive. It is very, very self-immolating for any Yoruba man or woman to join anybody to be destroying your fellow Yorubas because you want to sound woke. So like I summarized, what actually made the First Republic better? When we talk about regions are federating units. Because we need to bring the reason why you say, oh, regional movements, if they turn the entire Southwest into Oduduwa region today, and you still don't control 50% of your resources, you are still going to struggle. Because it's without resources, your regions are going to be dead. Let me tell you, a country that runs a regional system of government, but runs a unitary system of government. That was the system that Rossi wanted to create in 1966. He was going to unity. He wanted to take all the resources of Nigeria and put it in, because everybody wanted a piece of it. Everything Adawala was building in the West. The Igbos wanted it. The Fulanis wanted it, but they didn't know how to do it. Because we need to tell ourselves the truth. Because some people see one Nigeria as an excuse to bastardize, to invade, to appropriate other people's civilization and land. Which is why this one Nigeria should be explained. What is this one Nigeria? What is one Nigeria? What is it? If we don't understand this one Nigeria, then we are going to be in a state of eternal war. So the only advantage, regions are federating units. Tomorrow now, somebody can change states and say it's no longer called Osun State. It is now called Osun Province. It means nothing. So you can have Osun Province, or you can have states, or you can have regions. You can have cantons. Anything you want to call it. In Germany, they use states. In America, they use states. In Canada, they use province. So those are just semantics. In the First Republic, we were using regions. In Ghana, they use region. In Nigeria, we use states. So I was saying that there's a good example of a country that runs a regional system of government, but the resources is centralized. A good example is Ethiopia. So if anybody does not know history, you're going to think Ethiopia is running a regional system of government. No. Without resources, without the regions or the federating units controlling their resources, there is no federalism. So what Nrosi and the fellow other northern hegemons and their allies that came after Nrosi, what they successfully did in their bid to keep Nigeria united It was that they kept Nigeria united, but Nigeria was united in poverty. It is feudalism. They took us back into the Stone Ages. There's no prosperity because it was centralized. It is just in Abuja, at the capital. It is their vision for Nigeria that goes straight into the federating units. So if anybody takes over Nigeria now today, and what he wants to be pushing is Sharia law, then the rest of Nigeria is going to be under Sharia law. Another person comes in, he wants to be pushing cow, just like Buhari. The interest of cows, the interest of Fulani others, talking about Ruga, cattle colony, another shenanigans. Then the rest of Nigeria is still going to be in that state of chaos. From 2015 till now, Nigeria has not come out of the Fulani invasion that has invaded us. We've not been able to have a solution to it. It is killings, kidnapping of children, pregnant women. There are thousands of Nigerians in captivity all over from the southwest to the northeast in the hands of these non-state actors, mostly from Fulani ethnicity. So we have to understand where we are coming from. So everything Awolowo predicted. So the only thing they did for Awolowo, was to simply, the only thing they did for Awolowo was basically to ensure that Nigeria was broken, the regions was broken into pieces. And because of these regions was broken into pieces, the different ethnicities, mostly the bigger ethnicities, were able to have their states. Which is why many of you shouting regions, you need to understand that you are not the only ones in Nigeria. This conversation is extremely critical, so that some of our people are not going to put all of us into trouble. Now, when you say regions, you want Nigeria to go into regions. The thief man and the Juku man cannot be in the same region together. They will kill themselves. The German and the Ikwere man in the same region, we saw what they are doing to themselves in Rivers State. Now, you not take Bayelsa with the bulwark of the Jos, you put it together with Rivers again. Then they are going to start killing themselves. So the ethnic minorities are never going to join you to shout regionalism, which is why many of us are talking about ethno-linguistic federalism. So I'm going to stop here so that I can go deeply into the core of the topic today, because we have to start little by little. We have to be able to lay the foundations of Nigeria so that a lot of people do not bamboozle you. A lot of people do not manipulate you with Seyi Makinde politics, auxiliary politics, or all this ephemeral, unintellectual political discourse that we have on our social media, which is why when somebody said Olodo uprising is true. Olodo uprising is true. Because social media has given people that are not supposed to participate in political and intellectual conversation, it has given them platform. And they are replicating and cloning themselves in our society. So the Fourth Republic, let me not tell you what happened from 50%. From 50% where everybody was controlling their resources, where the people, the regions, were controlling what belongs to them. By the Second Republic, the region, the states were now controlling 30%. They were not controlling themselves. So that is how bad things are. So from 50% to 3%. It was during the time of Abacha that we now have what we call, that it was now 13%. Because Abacha wanted to draw the ethnic minorities closer. So the 13% we currently have, in terms of derivation formula, was not even the product of democratic era. It was not the negotiated thing we had. It was the Hausa Fulani Kanuri hegemony, the Fulani Kanuri hegemony that forced that 13% on us. So you can understand where we are coming from. That was why Nigeria Delta had to take up arms against the Nigerian state. That we negotiated. Nobody is going to negotiate to be in Nigeria, and you are going to be giving us peanuts from the resources under our ground, and you are coming around to tell us one Nigeria. Which is why the Nigerian state has been intentionally making some Niger Delta militant warlords in order to maintain the graveyard peace in that part of the country. Because Nigeria has been transformed into a mono economy post Biafra war. The foundation of Nigeria has been destroyed by the Kaduna Nziogu Ifeanyi coup. The ideology of statehood that the Igbos wanted to force on the rest of Nigeria might have destroyed Nigeria irreparably. Because we need to tell ourselves the truth. Anybody talking about Nigeria being great without trying to remedy these fundamentals is deceiving themselves. So we need to understand where we are coming from and where we are going. So in the Fourth Republic, there have been different talks. Should we start all over again and have a new constitution? But the reality is, we are not the only people within Nigeria. We must understand that. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to talk proper into the constitutional bottlenecks and why it is almost impossible for us to get everything we want. Awolowo suffered a lot in the First Republic. But what we are getting now, decentralization of electricity, decentralization of police, decentralization of railway, decentralization of prison, creation of regional commission. If the Yoruba people did not find a way via the help of Tinubu to Abuja, we will suffer for the next 200 years in the hands of Igbo nationalists and Fulani nationalists. Because the current structure favors them. Both of them are landlocked. They need access to the sea. They need access to the human and mineral resources of other ethnicities within Nigeria. You must understand that. Which is why there is no Nigerian interest. What we have is Yoruba interest within Nigeria. Anything to the movement, movement, you need to count me out. Movement. President of I'm not interested. Hey, there's my lecture, Mr. Digital. Multi pariwo. We pay Yoruba people ní ọ̀rẹ́ nínú Nigeria. Alliance le need. Wọ́n kàn fi ru igbó. Every person kò sí opposition mọ́ Nigeria torí pé Yorùbá ò sí opposition mọ́. Wọ́n máa infiltrate ní tẹ́ fẹ́ ṣe yẹn. Wọ́n dẹ̀ máa jàgbà. Internet ní kẹ́ negotiate. Bí Niger Delta ṣe fi oil resources wọ́n negotiate. Yorùbá lè fi economic power wa ká negotiate ní ta fẹ́. Bá ṣe máa ṣe mi ò ní sanwó fún lè bí. Ṣùgbọ́n pé we need to start a movement. Kí ló fi movement ṣe? That is why we have an institution like TYF. Torí la fẹ́ ní institutions like Dawn Commission. Torí la fẹ́ ní institutions like Afenifere. You go to them, you go and ask questions. Hello, lobby me, interfere. How many placards? How many like Shekato Shabatekun? Protest me no let shit every time for the state police. Protest me no let shit every time for the tax reform. We are not victims of it's a victim in Nigeria more. I mean that's the core mindset in Adeko. So there's give lecture over 40 minutes. Most of the agenda Igbo in Nigeria to agenda Yoruba. And you know something about that. Maybe I'll talk about the topic one day. What do Igbos want in Nigeria? Because many people have not asked this question. Can the Igbo find in Nigeria? Can the Fulani find in Nigeria? Can the Yoruba find in Nigeria? It is not the fault of Igbos. They've not done anything wrong. It is not the fault of Fulani. Give Fulani Berento find in Nigeria. They're asking for their rights now. Then Yoruba Mountain find in Nigeria. The prop fault is in here now. So what do the Igbos want in Nigeria? They want access to the Atlantic Sea. They want a seaport at all costs. The Igbos want to control Lagos with the Yoruba people. The Igbos, they want to have equal rights with indigenous people across Nigeria. The Igbos want to become the governor of Lagos State at all costs. The Igbos want the entire South to be under them. The Igbos want to become the lord and master of the entire southern Nigeria. Can two work together and say they agree? And you are saying we should work together with them. Because this is just fundamentals. Don't let people trauma band with you. We don't share the same interests. Tori and the south at the southwest. Now we get along. Because our majority are an interest of only. We are contented. Yoruba people are contented with southwest. Most south are contented with south. Yoruba people want resource control. South wants resource control. Yoruba people want ethno-linguistic federalism. South want ethno-linguistic federalism. Yoruba people have crude oil, they have large oil and gas. South has large oil and gas. Yoruba people have refinery. South has refinery. Yoruba people have access to the Atlantic coast anyhow you want it. South wants access to the Atlantic coast. So how are you? So why should both of you go and be doing alliance? South has enough land for its people. The entire, if you match Akwa Ibom and Calabar together, it's as big as the entire Southeast.
Yeah, bigger.
It's bigger than the entire Southeast. You take only your state is bigger as big as Southeast. So Onikaluku, they are contented, we are contented. That's why they are with Tinubu, and we are eating fine. So why are you not saying you should bring people that are looking for opportunity to annex Lagos? They want access to the sea, and you're saying the movement. Now. We are not that powerless, so. And if we really want the Yoruba of our dream, which is to protect ourselves within Nigeria, let me tell you the truth for those of you that are shouting Yoruba nation. You cannot break Nigeria without the concepts of America, of Britain, of Russia, and China. If any of those countries say no, because when we tell you this, a lot of you don't want to hear. Idealism, but reality will save you from destruction. I want to lose opportunity. Kill I need in Nigeria. I need the state police. Kill I need in Nigeria. Decentralization. Bobo biometrics, database, not decentralized. Second term of Tinubu, I'm saying it on here. What we should be fighting for is they should increase the derivation formula to 50%, like the First Republic. Because look at the resources in Nasarawa, the lithium reserve, the resources in Zamfara. Let us go and be developing our mineral resources. Look at the lithium in your states. So when states know they'll get 50%, everybody will go and tap their mineral resources. Because the 13% derivation, it was after 13%. They are now doing 3%, they still give 3% to the host community, 16%. That is the madness that PDP created for indigenous people in Nigeria. PDP is an Igbo plus Fulani party. It's the bitter truth. There is nothing pan-Nigeria about it.
Terrible combo.
There's nothing pan-Nigeria. It's a political party of former generals and their accomplices. And now we want to form PDP. While the people in NCNC, MPC, MPN, Alex Ekweme Kakos, and the former generals. Those are the people in PDP. PDP, power. It's all about power. Status quo.
People. Power to the people.
So if you look at that's the Indo-Koba APC here in our CPC element here. I want to buy that APC there. So if my APC tí ó wà marketable ní places like Osun, àwọn tó ti wà radicalized láàrin wa ni àwọn ẹbí Arẹ́gbẹ́ṣọlá. But they say all sort of terrible things in public. So we need to understand where we are coming from and where we are going. So mo follow bẹ̀yìn, Mr. Digital, ẹ má bínú bí mo ṣe sọ̀rọ̀ ó ká mi lára ní o. Olúkálùkù máa gbọ́n mọ̀ yẹ̀dá nínú Nàìjíríà ní o.
Last.
In terms of movement, èmi ọ̀nà not TY member all over Nigeria in the 10 states that TY plus FCT. Ẹ jẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀. Ẹ̀mí nẹ̀bẹ̀, ẹ má dárúkọ irú nǹkan báyìí mọ́.
Not even on this our platform.
Ṣé mo pé tó bá jẹ́ mi gan mo dá wọn lóhùn tó bá jẹ́ TV ṣé mo pé kò tẹ́ sọ yìí ni màá sọ kí ni mo fẹ́ lọ máa bá wọn tó wọn láì.
Because oníkálukú ló lájẹ́ndà tiẹ̀ náà.
Everybody get their agenda.
Nígbà táwọn sọ̀rọ̀ state police, the next thing ti South East ń sọ only how they are going to turn state of how they remove indigenship and replace it with residence. Àwọn yẹn fẹ́ fi báírò àti ìwé wọ́n fẹ́ fi gbalẹ̀ ólẹ̀ ẹ̀yin fẹ́ lọ́wọ́ bá wọn ṣe alliance. So we don't, and I gave a full lecture that lónìí that in táwọn need ó yàtọ̀ sí táwọn need ó yàtọ̀.
Ààrẹ nìkan ju ìbéèrè kan sí mi ó ní if Nigeria refuses to restructure, what is the long-term risk?
Nigeria started restructuring.
Good.
The restructuring of Nigeria has started. Look, there are two solutions to Nigeria: revolution or reformation. Revolution or reformation. People like Sowore, revolution àwọn dúró dé káwọn dá gbogbo ẹ̀rú. Àwọn adé ti sọ fún wọn, ní kí wọ́n má ṣe revolution. Ṣùgbọ́n lọ bẹ̀rẹ̀ l'Anambra, ẹ lọ bẹ̀rẹ̀ ní Kano, ẹ lọ bẹ̀rẹ̀ ní Zamfara.
Tabari pushing law, I join.
Ẹ fi àwọn leaders yín kẹ́ fi ṣe sample, kẹ́ kó wọn síta, kẹ́ fi wọ́n ṣe scapegoat. Tábà tí wá rí, tábà tí oṣù mẹ́ta tábí tó ṣẹlẹ̀ tẹ́ kó wọn síta táwọn fídíò yẹn pé this is nice, a good example. Àwọn náà wá join yín. Ṣùgbọ́n báyìí ní kó rárá dáadáa kí a máa jó táyà ní Ìbàdàn. Kí a máa jó infrastructure wa lẹ́kọ̀ọ́.
NSAS.
Kẹ́yìn máa sọ pé ẹ mórí Tinubu wá bẹ̀tẹ̀ ń fi Peter Obi pamọ́. Báwo ni ìwà ọ̀dàrú náà? Ó ní ìwà ọ̀dàrú ẹ tún fẹ́ ṣe the same tẹ́ ṣe ní 1966. Ẹ tún fẹ́ tún ṣe ní 2026. History is so important for people to learn from. You cannot run a revolution in a multi-ethnic state. There's no revolution, you are going to create anarchy. That was why revolution, the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring. Don't be failed in Syria, Iraq. Instead of revolution, it now led to killings. It led to the rise of ISIS. Actually, revolution only. Gbogbo Sokoto yẹn lákúrá ló máa take over. Gbogbo Gombe yẹn kúlíkúlí orúkọ tó ṣe kúlíkúlí orúkọ terrorist organization náà tó níbẹ̀ yẹn lọ. Àwọn tó máa take over nìyẹn.
Ààrẹ Fọlá àwọn máa lọ government house ní 1 million àwọn máa ní kí.
Nìkan máa lọ government house Port Harcourt nìkan lọ government house Lágòdì Ìbàdàn náà.
Ẹ fẹ́ kí wíkẹ́ dáná fún wọn ni.
Ẹ jẹ́ abẹ̀rẹ̀ láti north.
So àwa ṣe ń gbóná nígbà tẹ́jì òdì wa ọmọ wọn president l'Abuja lọ bọ́ sí revolution náà dáwọ́ nìyẹn. Ẹ ṣe pọ́n dì wá.
Ẹ jẹ́ káwọn èèyàn bínú ààrẹ.
Tábà ti parí 2031 àwọn náà lè máa join wọn lórí space ká máa sọ̀rọ̀ revolution. Tọ́mọ tó máa parí 2031 àwọn máa kájọ́ revolution. For now, reformation là ń ṣe. We are doing reformation currently. State police, decentralization of railway. Awólọ́wọ̀ òdìbò gbólé gbà náà. The powers that be, Peter Obi àti Atiku will never allow this to happen. In the next 1 million years. The next 1 million years. Torí ẹ̀ ní Southwest, South-South and Middle Belt Alliance is extremely critical. Because South-South pé South-South máa believe pé ní pé ẹ fẹ́ change leadership to residency. So gbogbo owó epo àwọn ọmọ Igbo tó bí sọ́dọ̀ àwọn Fúlàní tó bí sọ́dọ̀ àwọn ẹjọ́ mọ́ pín. No. Igbo Yorùbá náà economic power wa gbogbo lọ́wọ́ ti ṣe kalẹ̀ tó ń sọ fún wàrà tí fún yín. Àwọn ọmọ kíran kan wà mọ́ bá pín. No. Middle Belt ẹgbẹ́nu kú náà wà. Benue, Taraba, they are fighting Plateau. Ẹ wà ní kẹjọ residency. So àwọn Fúlàní tó ti wá láti Mali wọ́n bá gbalẹ̀. Finally. Which is why the South-South, Southwest, Middle Belt is extremely critical for the survival of indigenous African civilization. So that's why calculation we your Southeast kúrò. Because one need the access to the sea. They need access to the sea. This is on the 19th First Republic. They want to destroy it. In the First Republic, they had 2 premiers. They were the president of Nigeria. Yeah. They were the Senate president. They control all the ministries. They control railway. They control Nigerian stuff. They control everything. You need a coup because you are still not satisfied. And what happened? They liberated the ethnic minorities, 13 genocide, and they turned it to a dot in the circle. They told them to support. I'm asking you to lie. Into what Southeast, only one chef from Serbia after the fall of Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Serbia was turned into a landlocked country. And yet, people need to understand history. Country can be Bosnia. Bosnia can be 20 kilometer access. Nani si okun. Ṣé àwọn Croatia lọ ṣe fún Bosnia? Àwọn Croatia wá lọ ṣe bridge. See in the area tí wọ́n in order to block Bosnia from having full navy. Wọ́n bẹ̀ Bosnia ní ẹni tó bá já bridge àwọn is a declaration of war.
Ẹ̀mí ẹ̀ ti jábọ́ nìyẹn.
So 2 countries ni wọ́n sọ di landlocked. Bosnia já fitafita wọ́n já ogun láti access to the sea. Croatia tún lọ build the bridge sórí ẹ̀. Torí ẹ̀dá bá pariwo we are going to dredge Abia River, Imo River, Asumili River. Àwọn ọmọ ìjọ yẹn lọ kọ́ bridge sórí ẹ̀ ni. Ó ti tán nìyẹn. Ọ̀kan lọ ṣe dam.
Wọ́n bá wíkẹ́ ń bẹ̀.
So you need to understand. So àwọn yẹn problem tí wọ́n yàtọ̀. Àsọmọ Yorùbá kí lẹ́yìn ní ìdínú Nàìjíríà? Kí ni Yorùbá ní ìdínú Nàìjíríà?
Àwọn kan ò ní ìdí kankan.
Mo agree. Bá a ṣe máa sọ̀tọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ Kwara, a sọ̀tọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ Kogi, the Yorùbá part of Edo, the Yorùbá part of Delta. Ó dẹ̀ gba ọpọlọ. Kò dẹ̀ ṣe tá a máa discuss níta.
Tó ààrẹ ṣe we have 15 minutes more. Ẹ ti jẹ́ káwọn èèyàn bínú gan ààrẹ o. Olúfúnmi Grace láti orí Facebook náà ti.
Ààrẹ kọ́ ló jẹ́ kó bínú.
Wọ́n ní pé I was shocked too. Irú movement sọ́ni wo nìyẹn? Àwọn èèyàn ti bínú gan. Ìkànnì Yomite ọ̀rẹ́ yín dáadáa ó ní nígbà tó ń gbàgbọ́ ẹ̀ tó ń blow the two premier positions tó ní only they control the two premier universities you and Unilag tó tó wá fi hàn tó fẹ́ kó fi búrẹ́dì kó wà lọ́bẹ̀ jẹ àwọn yẹn sọ̀rọ̀ gan wọ́n ti bínú gan lórí YouTube àti Facebook àti gbogbo ẹ̀wẹ̀ aṣáàdùpẹ̀ lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ ẹ ṣe wọn rẹ what's going on sister Anike kí ló kàn.
ó ti ẹ̀ fẹ́ sọ kankan ni.
Okay,
ṣé mo
very
pé
briefly.
many times our people maybe they choose to just ignore, but we always say this, we say it many times, where these people, they're where we can be friends with. Our people, we want to get one more knowing. Gbogbo territory, one sons here, we want Biafra, we want this. Already something by Lale. You cannot scatter Nigeria without the consent of some powerful countries. You can't. So, Ofe Biafra, everybody knows that is not what they wanted. They never wanted Biafra. Let us also rule Nigeria. You've been in power in the past. What did you use it for? Kilo fishe. But when we talk, our people feel like we are saying too much or we are not being nice. They want to be nice to everybody. Anyway, our ideology is different. We are nationalists and we can't compare ourselves to these people. And everybody have a choice to say whatever they want to say. But as Yoruba people, at this point, if you cannot ask yourself the question, what do I want within Nigeria? Then you are a part of the problem. Mommy, Mommy Dabiri. Yes.
Mi ò ní much láti sọ. Inú mi kàn máa ń dùn tí ààrẹ bá ti wá on stage because history gan ta yọ̀lẹ́ láti lọ kànú. Ààrẹ àwọn àyàn náà ìfún wa, ayé wa pérépéré. Mo dẹ̀ wish pé many more young people will come on this stage to learn history. In tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ sí wa, ó ti ṣẹlẹ̀ níbò míì. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí ààrẹ ṣe sọ. And láti learn from the history of other need àti lọ reinvent will in tó ṣẹlẹ̀ ní àwọn ethnic groups other countries àwa náà lè fi ṣe àríkọ́gbọ́n bí so inú mi máa ń dùn ní tí bá ti wá sí nationalism series láti gbọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ and àdúrà wa ni pé regional system yẹn á padà wá àwa túnra wa tò nílẹ̀ Yorùbá bá a ṣe fẹ́ rọ̀ yẹn tó bá lè fún wa á dáa.
ọ̀tẹ̀ ló ń jẹ́ ló ń pè ọ́ kò sẹ́ni tí ò lórúkọ tiẹ̀ àti wípé ọmọ kì í gọ̀ títí sẹ́ẹ̀ kó gbàgbé orúkọ ara rẹ̀ ààfin tèmi ò nílò ìdánimọ̀ lọ́jà tó bá dọ́jà báyìí wọ́n á mọ̀ kó dọ́jà ní èmi tí ń tòótọ́ Samuel Owóyẹmí fẹ́lẹ́fẹ́lẹ́ láyé lórúkọ mi fẹ́lẹ́ ní gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ mí sí èmi náà kọ́ Ọlọ́run ọba òkè ló fún mi ṣe ní gbogbo ìgbà.